The world of tomorrow. Trains zooming coast to coast via vacuum tube. Gleaming cities in the sky. And of course, flying cars. That was what the future was supposed to hold for us.
I grew up expecting to live on the moon, be able to travel in rockets. I was going to be an astronaut. So when 2001 came out, there was a future that looked really possible. In 30-odd years, we could probably have space stations and passenger liners run by Pan Am.
Pan Am doesn't exist anymore.
Precisely.
All his life, writer and illustrator Ron Miller dreamed of exploring space.
That's a desert on Mars. They're scouting out where we're going to build the resort.
He's had to settle for imagining it.
Mars has these wonderful little tornadoes. And I feel in a way I was promised this future. And it's never paid off.
There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day.
The fair was a fair of the space age.
Architectural historian John Kriskevich got his first glimpse of that big, bright, beautiful world of tomorrow when he was 5 years old and visited the 1964 World's Fair in New York. Oh my gosh, it's sort of church-like.
It is.
He took us into the fair's Hall of Science. You're 5 years old and all your circuits are firing.
Of course. It's like, I want to live in this future.
A future that was already happening. Which rocket is this?
This is the rocket that launched the Mercury program. We're literally on our way. By the second season of the fair in 1965, men had walked in space. So we were seeing progress each year.
This was almost proof that the future was possible.
Absolutely.
50 years on, a lot of the fair's predictions didn't pan out. Though it must be said, all those logos were a sign of things to come. One thing that the World's Fair definitely got right about the future is the dominating impact of corporate sponsorship.
It did.
But wait a minute, we still don't have flying cars.
We get this all the time. Where's my flying car? We were promised flying cars.
James Meggs is editor-in-chief of Popular Mechanics. He says we could have flying cars right now. But the better question is, do we want them?
It's such a great fantasy. It's such a cool idea. Various ones have been built over the years. There's a company trying to sell some today that work. The problem is that cars and planes are so different. So what you wind up with is a terrible plane that once you land and try to drive around, it's a terrible car.
Popular Mechanics has been predicting the future for 111 years now. A lot of the times they nailed it. In 1954, the magazine predicted the flat-screen TV.
It took a long time, but we finally got it.
But a lot of times they didn't nail it. Mail delivery by parachute.
Isn't that cool?
Really cool.
Isn't that cool? I mean, so the very, very early days of airmail, people thought, well, why shouldn't this go right to your house? And again, more or less feasible, if crazy.
Vacuum tube powered trains. I mean, that's pretty cool that you could get from New York to San Francisco in an hour.
It's a great idea. It would be insanely expensive to build the infrastructure to do it.
And then there's the future we're lucky never happened.
Imagine how wonderful it would be to live in a house like this.
The house of the future where everything was more or less plastic. Everything could be hosed down for convenience.
You know what I always wanted to happen, you always saw it in the cartoons, is the little pill where you just put some water on it and it goes into a big turkey dinner. Some of these predictions feel like they were conceived by the Warner Brothers animation team.
Well, a lot of things we have today were conceived by science fiction writers.
Look up there, the albatross, a fantasy come to life.
In the 1880s, Jules Verne wrote a novel about a propeller-driven airship.
A little kid named Igor Sikorsky read it. And he said, wow, I'm going to grow up and build a machine just like this.
Yes, Sikorsky grew up to build a helicopter. Another Verne classic, From the Earth to the Moon.
The seminal founders of modern astronautics, Hermann Oberth, Robert Goddard, Wernher von Braun, they all said they became interested in rocketry and the possibility of flying into space because they read Jules Verne's book when they were kids.
And then there's the remarkable case of Murray Leinster, whose 1946 short story imagined a two-way television with a keyboard.
You would use that to get news, communicate with your neighbors. You could also use it for research.
Sounds like the internet.
Precisely.
Leinster also predicted that this technological wonder would have disastrous repercussions. A person could learn the best way to murder his wife, or how to build a bomb. The world of tomorrow, as most science fiction writers see it, is a pretty scary place. More dystopia than utopia.
Most utopias are boring. Dystopias have got to be more interesting. That's where everything goes wrong. In utopia, everything's already solved.
Utopias are kind of like infomercials.
Exactly.
Looking back at these, does it seem that people were more optimistic about the future than they are now?
I think sometimes they were a little too optimistic in the past, and they're too pessimistic today. Life expectancies have gone up. Disease has fallen around the world dramatically. You know, the cars we drive, the homes we live in are so much more efficient and safer and more capable. But we tend to really romanticize the past, and we catastrophize the present.
I was on a plane once, like about a month ago.
Louis C.K., the comic, is a great routine.
The flying one? Isn't that great?
I had to sit on the runway for 40 minutes. Oh my God, really? What happened then? Did you fly through the air like a bird? I had to pay for my sandwich. You're flying! You're sitting in a chair in the sky.
People take amazing things for granted. Like, my phone is so slow. It's like, wait, your phone is connecting you to the entire world.
Without a cord, and you're walking down the street.
This is the age